God, there I am on the screen. This is Josh with the Synchronized Universe, and welcome to the live stream. Welcome. Hope for hopefully a good night tonight. It's been a little bit since I've done a live stream. Obviously work gets to me. Things happen that make it to where I can't get on here. I got kids running around the house, and sometimes it takes an act of God to get these kids in a place where I can just have a minute to myself. It's all good. But tonight I'm going to be talking about skepticism and why it's so important. I actually got this idea recently. I'm part of a ghost group, an online ghost group, actually a couple different groups. And somebody had posted something about people were being overly skeptical and reporting posts out of spite, I guess. And, Facebook is possibly going to take some of this stuff down because of that. And it made me think, because skepticism it can be a valuable tool in, disseminating information. It can be valuable to be skeptical. I'm a skeptic myself when it comes to a lot of things. And it can be definitely healthy to be skeptical. But when is being overly skeptical too much? That's the idea. When can being skeptical of any new ideas keep you from, for example, actually finding the truth in something because you're too stuck in your ways? That's why, honestly, it seemed like a good idea to chat about it. You know what I mean? Hopefully somebody gets on here and chats with me about, what they think about skepticism and what, maybe some skepticisms they have on new information coming out, anything. I want to cover a little bit about religion, a little bit about ancient history, because there's skeptics in all of these fields that tend to, like when any new information comes out, people, like for instance, the whole flat earth idea now. Anytime you go on, you want to get a laugh, go on any of NASA's stuff that they post and anything about space, and there's just nothing but, people who are flat earthers or whatever talking, they're essentially skeptical about anything that, modern science is talking about as far as outer space. We live on a flat plane according to them. And again, this is, where do you draw the line of being skeptical? How far is too far when it comes to being skeptical, right? So a couple things I'm going to cover here. Let's define skepticism. Skepticism is a critical questioning attitude towards knowledge claims. And again, skepticism can be how we can grow when we're presenting information. When, science presents a theory, obviously you have skeptics. You have people that try to disprove that theory through scientific, methods, right? And that's, one of the things that can be important about skepticism is, again, it helps us to evaluate information critically, avoid misinformation, and make informed decisions. Super, super important. So skepticism in science. So the foundation, it is really the foundation of, God, I can't talk. This is live again, for those that want to trip about, you didn't re-record that part. Anyway, the foundation of scientific inquiry, emphasizing empirical evidence, testability, and peer review. So again, I was, let's use the ghost group for example. A lot of people are skeptical about the existence of the paranormal as a whole, and this is a solid argument, because people often disbelieve what they can't see. And a lot of people tie the paranormal to religious beliefs, etc. And the fact is, you cannot disprove the existence of the paranormal, just like you can't conclusively prove it's real through the current understanding, scientific methods, right? You can essentially prove that there's something going on, but you cannot essentially prove the paranormal exists. Just like, again, you cannot disprove it. I'll give you another example. You cannot disprove that God exists. Just like it's very difficult to prove that God exists. And, disclaimer here, I'm obviously a believer in God, but, I'm also open-minded to people who may not believe in the same way that I do, and that's fine. Part of my skeptical nature is no matter what I research, so I'll give you an example of my history. I got heavily into conspiracy stuff when I was deep down into dark depressionville and onto drugs that I shouldn't have been on. And one of the things I realized is that actually is an industry. So if you research anything, let's take flat earth for an example. You can find enough convincing arguments from people on YouTube that, oh my God, they're probably right. Seems correct. And, you can pretty much prove anything. But the fact is, you have to know and be able to understand and be skeptical of some of the things that you're reading or watching, because not a lot of people are presenting information in a way that sounds good, but it's not necessarily real. A lot of people are posting stuff for content. And of course, that's what I'm doing right now too, posting stuff for content. But there's a lot of people who send me tons of YouTube videos to watch, and it's like, oh my God, this and that, we're being eaten by aliens in the middle of the night. Next week, we're all going to die, like just craziest things ever. And like people will watch a convincing TikTok and instantly believe what these people are saying. And like, did you not do any of the research behind it? Like if you're watching a video and it makes you think something, like gets you to think a way that you've never thought before, like, oh, the world's going to end next week, you should probably research what it is that they're trying to tell you. They often have key points in their things. Research where they got that information. That's a solid place to start. Figure out where their source is, because a lot of people, again, are just making crap up, bro. A lot of people use all these events now to freaking talk about, the end times in the Bible, right? And people have been saying the end times are coming forever, right? In the Bible, you can pretty much go back through history. Oh, the end times happens. But my mom's been saying that since I was a kid. Like, if the end times are going to happen, it's going to happen. Whether, not the Bible predicted them, who knows? But no matter what, when crazy events happen, people are like, oh, it's happened in the Bible. That's what they're telling us. It's going to happen now this way, right? But the truth is, nobody ever knows, okay? And that's why, it is important to be skeptical, but not overly skeptical on stuff. And so I'm going to dive into this. So while skepticism is a valuable tool for critical thinking, it can sometimes hinder progress and innovation. So some different reasons why individuals might be resistant to new ideas. So like, why are people skeptical? Cognitive biases. These are big ones, right? You learn about this in college. Sorry, food's catching up. I'm dying. God, hope you guys like my sweatshirt, custom made. It's like my favorite show. Pretty badass. Confirmation bias. This is a big one in our day and age. You see it all over the place. People tend to seek out information that confirms their existing beliefs and ignore evidence that contradicts them. A lot of biblical people do this. Like, I'm going to seek out information that just confirms what I already know. And you're not going to grow mentally or spiritually by doing that. You know what I mean? You have to be able to go outside of the box a little bit, if you will. So anchoring bias. People rely too heavily on the first piece of information they encounter when making decisions. That's a good one. Availability heuristic. I don't know if I'm saying that right. People overestimate the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. It's a good one. I've actually never heard of that one. That's, it's got me written all over it, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Some emotional factors for skepticism. Fear of the unknown. Big one. New ideas can be unsettling because they challenge the familiar. So science, history, all of these things are full of a lot of unhealthy skepticism. And any research into alternative history theories, like not necessarily alternative versions of history, right? But research into the possibility, for example, of there being an ancient civilization before us. That one leads down a path of like people getting hostile because we have a view that has been taught to us about history happening in such a straight line, and anything outside of that causes people to lash out because I think, it affects their worldview. And a lot of these scholars have pride in what they're doing. They want to be right. And the fact is, we keep encountering, older and older ruins, like Göbekli Tepe, for example, is a big one. And essentially, it has to rewrite history as we know it, but people are still skeptical, even as we find all these older and older ruins. They want to fit it into the puzzles of what we have, when in reality, it looks, a lot like what like people like Graham Hancock have been saying for years. Is might actually be correct, that there was a predecessor civilization before us, and they may have been wiped out, may or may not have been wiped out by some kind of a cataclysmic event, and we had to start all over again. I mean, Plato talks about it, like we're talking about Atlantis here. But what the heck? Oh, anyway, sorry. Notifications are throwing me off. I thought I was on Do Not Disturb here, but yeah, again, that's something that Plato talks about. It is mentioned all over in different versions of history, and people, again, would rather be to the death skeptical of this kind of information. For example, the pyramids are another example. Like, we don't truly know how they were built. We are just taught that they were built, to be tombs. We are taught that they were built, using a pulley system, more than a pulleys, or people, rollers, and people pulling with ropes over these huge blocks, right? Pulling these blocks over rollers and whatnot. And despite no evidence suggesting it, no hieroglyphics suggesting that, this is just what we are taught. And again, there's no where is their source on this? Oh, trust me, bro. But again, that's why I remain completely skeptical at heart. No matter what I research, I always remain skeptical at heart. UFO phenomenon, I remain skeptical at heart. Regardless if I'm a believer, it's going to take me seeing this crap for me to actually believe it. As far as, again, back to the history stuff goes, I've read enough to know, and if you research, read stuff that Graham Hancock does. This man is a genius. He is an investigative journalist, and he goes out, puts together all this information, goes to all these places, talks to people, does what journalists are supposed to do, challenges the mainstream narrative on things, and people absolutely hate him for it. And that's fine, like, it's crazy to me. Like, why are you hating somebody because they're putting forth a different idea? And if you've read any of his stuff, he's literally just basing his stuff off of different people he talks to, different research papers, legitimate sources. You know what I mean? And I actually just finished his book on the Ark of the Covenant, the sign and the seal. That stuff is solid, man. I don't know. But again, being overly skeptical will keep you from researching anything like this. Again, I used to, when I was obsessed with conspiracy stuff, I used to started to believe everything I seen. And I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't function in society anymore because I'm like, the world is false. And you have to have a healthy balance, bro. You have to be able to work in society. And, I also know that society is messed up and it's run by people who are greedy and in power. But if you get obsessed with this idea and be like, oh, I'm not going to work because I'm not going to work for those people who control us and all this stuff, like, you're not going to get anywhere. Yes, the people control, make money and pay these bills, bro, somehow. You know what I mean? But so yeah, went off on a whole tangent about the fear of unknown. Loss aversion. People are often motivated to avoid losses than to gain. More motivated to avoid losses than to gain. This is a big one in the academic community because a lot of people don't realize, for example, archaeology. A lot of archaeologists are funded by universities. And if they put forth a different idea than the university approves, they can lose their funding. So a lot of people are unwilling to research things outside of these, what do you call those? Outside of the norm. Let's just use the norm, for example. And so they keep, we keep regurgitating the same nonsense, and they research from a perspective that I already know the answer. I'm just going to keep uncovering crap that confirms this. So again, a lot of mainstream academia is literally full of confirmation bias. I'm just going to keep confirming what I know rather than going where the story takes me. It's a good one. Where was I at? Pride. People resist new ideas to protect their ego and sense of self-worth. If you were the first one to put forth an idea that, humans came from here, went to point A, point B, point C, and later on somebody, that's your whole life story, right? And later on somebody comes up by and is like, nope, this is wrong because of this, this, and this. And yes, of course, that's going to hurt your pride, bro. Like, honestly. So you need to become so open-minded that stuff like this doesn't bother you. Like, my worldview can change at the drop of a hat. Somebody puts forth new evidence about this, that, and this, I'm all for it. Prove it to me. Show me the data that you got. Show me the science. You know what I mean? I love it. All right, let's go into societal factors. Groupthink. People may conform to the beliefs of their group to avoid social ostracism. It's a big one, man. We all know this. People conform to the group, the beliefs of their group, like churches. This happens in the academic world. This happens in the political world. This is all over the freaking place. And this is an area that I've always felt like an outsider in because I have never been a group thinking person. I'm the opposite. I will do whatever I can to think the opposite of the group people because I know that when people get into groupthink, they get stuck. They get, turn into freaking people that are not themselves. Like, I'm always going to be my own voice, regardless of what everybody thinks. That's the way I am. Cultural bias. People tend to maybe be reluctant to accept new ideas that conflict with their cultural values or tradition. Another big one. Not a big one for me because I'm not really a cultured individual, if you will. You know what I mean? I don't know. Don't got much culture. Pride. People may resist new ideas to protect their ego and say, I already read that one. My bad, bro. I'm just repeating things that I wrote. Authority bias. People may be more likely to believe information from a trusted authority figure, even if it's incorrect. People may be more likely to believe information from a trusted authority figure, even if it's incorrect. Think about that for a second. Get a little quiet, because that's a big one. People, dude, think of how many things you think that the government out here is batting 100. You think they're telling us the truth? You think that during the pandemic nonsense that they were telling us 100% of the truth the whole time? Absolutely freaking not. Not going to go there because I don't want to get demonetized on here, but we all were alive during this time. We know. So experiential factors. So another thing that causes people to be skeptical is past failures. Negative experience with previous new ideas or beliefs can make people more cautious. Completely understandable. Lack of understanding. If people don't understand a new idea, they may be more likely to reject it. I think that's a lot of what it is out here is like a lot of people, maybe lack the intelligence to understand it, or maybe just don't understand something because it's beyond their level of thinking. I don't really know how to explain that otherwise. I'm not trying to be rude, but competing interests. People may be skeptical of new ideas that threaten their personal or professional interests. Again, back to the academic world, that's 100%. Skeptical of new ideas that threaten their personal or professional. A lot of people's jobs can be threatened by new ideas. If you have an idea that completely devalues your whole profession, like, oh man, my stuff doesn't mean anything because the world is much older. I don't know. So again, those are some different reasons that people can be skeptical. A big thing, again, that people are skeptical in is about religion and spirituality. Like me, this is one that's kind of personal for me because I started out researching religion and spirituality because I was skeptical that, I was essentially skeptical that only, for example, Christians say that their God is the only true God. So I started researching that from I'm going to get you back kind of a point of view, and being like, I started to realize I believe, and I've always believed, that all religions believe in a different God. Somebody commented on one of my other videos, and I haven't had a chance to respond. And they said that Buddhism has no God. They're correct. Buddhism does not have a God. But what did you think that you're encountering during meditation? When you're in meditation and you're encountering, essentially the universe, what do you think that is? That is God. The kingdom of God is inside. God is the universe. So regardless of Buddhism not believing in a central God figure, God is essentially still you, and you are God. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not a religious person. I don't even really like to say that I'm a spiritual person. Again, I believe that God is the source of the universe and literally everything and everyone that you see. I follow the source, follow my book series, The Law of One. That's basically, you could call that a philosophy, whatever you want to call it. But like, if there's anything that would define what I believe in, it's probably that. But yeah, like, being skeptical of essentially religion itself is a reason why I started researching that field. Being skeptical of history as we know it is another reason that I started researching different versions of history. And again, there's a lot of false information. The word misinformation obviously comes to mind when it comes to history, when it comes to religion, when it comes to alternative science. There's a lot of pseudoscience. I hate using that word because that's really loaded. Like, there's a lot of super good, non-university backed scientists out there that are doing a lot of good things. But let's see. Woo. Time flies when you're having fun here. Philosophical arguments, historical. So I did want to touch on ancient history a little bit again, because super duper, like, I've been watching more of Graham Hancock's videos and reading more stuff. Like, but yeah, I wish I had somebody to chat with about this, because like, this is way more interesting to like bounce ideas off of people. What do you think it means when we keep finding these older and older, megalithic ruins, and we have no answer for how they were built? Like, what do you think that means? Like, why, how do we explain this with conventional understanding of history? We don't. Like, it starts to lay merit to the fact that perhaps civilization is much older than we've been led to believe. That's just the facts. Like, I believe that there was a predecessor civilization that had reached a high level of technology. And a lot of skeptics would say, where is the evidence? So, use an example. Do you think that your iPhone is going to stand the test of time if it was in the ground? No. Do you think most of the buildings or anything that we built would stand the test of time? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? I think that we have to take, go back to the religious idea. There's a lot of flood myths globally. Perhaps maybe something like that did happen. There is quite a bit of evidence that suggests that there was a comet impact causing the Younger Dryas climate event, which was like, what, I think 11,600 years ago or something like that. Got my timeline on that wrong, I'm sure. But it's okay. Let me know in the comments if you know that one. But let's chat more about this the next time, because I'm about out of time on this episode. But appreciate anybody who's taking the time to tune in on this one. Much love to you all. We're going to continue to talk on skepticism with my guest next week. I'll reveal to you who that is next time. Much love, my friends.